Thank you, Chair. We are recording.
Okay, very good. I'd like to call this committee of the whole meeting of March 9th, 2023 to order by Councillor Bruin, acting as the acting chair of this committee. The agenda has been circulated, and can I have a motion to approve the agenda that the March 9th, 2023 committee of the whole agenda be adopted or amended? Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Mary. All in favor? Did it. All right, then moving on to the adoption of minutes. Gonna have a motion that the February 16th, 2023 committee of the whole meeting minutes be adopted as presented. Moved by Mayor Hoffman. Seconded by Councillor McNary. All in favor? Okay. And then we go on to the business arising from the minutes. So the purpose for today is to discuss the 2023 District of Lillooet municipal budget. This is the second meeting as such. I guess the objective for the day is to have questions and inquiries from mayor and council answered by staff. The secondary is to provide direction to staff, if any, with regard to changes to the budget that we wish to recommend. Or if we have no such recommendations, we can agree to send the budget to council, the next council meeting, for first, second, and third reading. And then we'll have in a regular meeting. So either recommendations or moving on to a regular meeting. We've had a prior meeting, I'm not sure when, but in our prior meeting of the committee of the whole, we had a number of questions. Some of those will be answered today. We also had a whole bunch of questions subsequent. So what I'd like to do before delving into things is run through a list of topics that we have touched upon. And perhaps if there are any additional topics that you have, then maybe you can add it to this list of 19 points. So that we don't miss anything and that we are sure that we've covered all the different bases. So the 19 points, and I don't have the thing to write things on, but the 19 points are surpluses and reserves. The second point is deficits that are in account, as Councillor Weed had a question about that. Councillor Flan had a question about the COVID-19 restart funding. We have a question about the budget for upkeep and maintenance of historic buildings, such as the Miyazaki House and Museum. There was a question about the capital expenditures, about PILT funding from Mayor Huffel, about the tax exemptions from Councillor Reid, water meters from Councillor Flan, how we're going to spend the Growing Communities Fund contribution of 1.2 million. There is a question about investment policy, about service levels on road maintenance from Mayor Huffel, around economic development, around the pool opening schedule or plan, and the contributions from SWIMS. That's from Councillor Flan and Weed. We have a question about staffing levels, potential staffing levels and realistic staffing levels, about sales, the revenue from sales services, about bylaw enforcement, Councillor Flan, and then there's a question about what the budget would look like if we did not have any transfers from reserves like the stabilization reserve. And then there's two final sort of topics. That's the desirable level of surplus that's currently in the budget, and what scenarios would look like if we have different tax increases, but those I think are sort of related. So we may only have 18. Are there any additional topics that we would like to add at this point? We're gonna talk about budget 2024. No. Good. Because we are approving budget 2024 at this point as well. Anyway, any other topics? No, like I said,
No, that wasn't a handout, you were just.
yes, okay.
Okay.
This is just my notes from all the emails that I have. So I'll just do, I'll start at the top, work my way through. If there's anything else that arises, then that's
Actually, what I wanted to talk about, but eventually probably go into the 2024 combined. The right person. On the budget for the 20.
yes. Oh, okay. Right, but you want to keep it on there?
Yes.
Yes, okay, perfect. All right, anything else? No, okay, then we'll start with surpluses and reserves, which are on page 115. And you're saying that,
I'm not gonna start exactly there, but
okay,
we will. Remember my instructions here. All right. It's a little clearer than this. So from when we started on February 16th, we were all still wide awake at the end of that meeting. These are the changes that we made to the budget since then. So we had the rec center collective agreement that was ratified. That did result in some changes to the salaries and wages. After some discussion with Jeremy and some of council, we've changed the start dates anticipated for some of the vacant positions to be May 1st, which we think is a little more realistic. That would be the bylaw officer, the manager of recreation, and the utility 2 operator. I did not change the director of public works and utilities because those wages are covering the wages for our interim director. And then as well, because we had some year-end bills that came through, particularly for pellets, I did have to adjust the SWIMS funding that we had left on hand. So that's down about $12,000. So end result right now, this again is with a 6.9% property tax increase. End result right now is a surplus of $376,007. Of that, 100,000 is in general, 77,000 in water, and about 198,000 in sewer.
Okay.
So this accumulated surplus, what the heck is it? So every year we have revenues, we have expenses. Revenues minus expenses in our annual surplus, or in the case of a business, your profit, right? Everybody is comfortable with those. That annual surplus then gets kind of dumped into the pot of the district's accumulated surplus. So that's all of the surpluses that we've had over every year that we've been in operation, or deficits, if that was the case. Right now, we have about 2.6 million in appropriated surplus, about 1 million in unappropriated surplus, and about 7.9 million in our reserve funds. Unappropriated surplus that we have about 1 million, that is surplus that can be used for pretty much anything, as long as it's used for the general or the water or the sewer, whichever the surplus belongs to. The appropriated surplus is ad hoc reserves that have been set up. They're not set by bylaw, but they're set up because the funds we've received are for something specific. So it has to be set aside specifically for that use, but it's not in a bylaw. And then our reserve funds, they are set up by bylaw. And those bylaws establish the reserve funds and they tell us what we can use them for. We can't use them for anything else. There are some exceptions. You can borrow from them if you have to, but you have to pay back plus interest. It's basically, they have to be used for what they were set up for. So our total accumulated surplus right now, excluding our investment in PCAs, because that's not really money, that's our capital assets, the book value really of our capital assets. So excluding that, we currently have about $11.5 million in accumulated surplus. Again, that's our unappropriated, appropriated, and reserve funds. So that 12.5 million that we have cash on hand is actually, the majority of it is those reserves and surpluses.
The reserve for certain projects is what you're saying, right?
Most of them are, yes, except for that $1 million that's in unappropriated.
Okay.
So all of the revenue that we have in the budget this year, you can see from our own funds, so our reserve and surpluses, we're budgeting to use about $3.8 million. That's actually even higher than the 2.4 million that we're budgeting to get in property tax revenues. So we're actually budgeting to use more of our own funds than our taxpayers' funds.
Those reserves and surpluses were built up over the last few years with.
Absolutely, with taxpayer money, yes.
And that comes out of the reserves part of it, or the unappropriated or the appropriated side?
Most of it's coming out of the reserves.
Okay. Right, any further, yes.
Through the chair, so. Is there a specific amount that we should have in reserves in case of an emergency and taking that much out to just whatever? Are you still going to be in a good place?
Yes.
Just going from that asset thing.
So I sent all of council our reserve and surplus policy yesterday, I think it was, and it does outline what the optimal balances of our reserve and surplus funds should be. And with the exception of one, that we're under the optimal balance by $2,500, with the exception of one, we're above the optimum balance in all of our reserves. So the pool,
Sorry, can I, the pool comes later.
okay, I've just got like two more here.
Yeah,
Just to-
but we'll get to the pool when we get to the.
Okay,
If that's okay,
sure.
yes. Okay, so that's on the reserves and the surpluses. Can you, on page 115, can we just look at a few of those reserves and what's happening with those reserves? I'm fairly curious to learn if we're contributing to the reserves or taking out of the reserve. And perhaps you could indicate what the purposes are of.
And I'm sorry, are you on 151 of the agenda? We're gonna,
115 of the budget.
that's the budget. All right, so in 2023, sorry, I hope it's okay if I say it here. 2023, we're budgeting to use 211,000 out of our general reserve. That is for carry forward of the remainder of the SKU equipment, as well as $208,000 for the airport upgrades phase 2.
Sarah, what's SPU equipment?
Structure protection unit.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I was gonna say sprinkler.
Oh, and that's the general?
That's the general.
Okay.
The roads reserve, we're budgeting to use 189,000. That's for whatever council determines priority road work is for the year.
Okay.
Vehicle equipment, 610, that's the majority is the water tender.
Yep.
And then there's also a carry forward a little bit for the ice resurface. And then the confined space equipment and a bylaw services vehicle.
Okay.
Nothing from cemetery replacement, gas tax, 170,000. That is the zoning bylaw, the subdivision development servicing bylaw. The asset management, part of the asset management, the remainder of the Downton Park revitalization. Recreation, there's a whole bunch.
Okay.
Recreation is the remainder of the HVAC. The caboose restoration. And then there's the pool heat exchanger, the mezzanine chairlift, which we actually just found out we didn't get the grant for, so that probably won't go ahead.
Okay.
Weight room equipment, the arena heat recovery, booking software, pool sand filter and piping. And some of the Conway Park upgrades.
Okay.
Water, 51,000, that is new compressors. And sewer, 595. Majority of that is for the district's portion of funding the wastewater treatment plant upgrades.
Yep.
As well as a small amount for component replacements.
Then I have one more question on this.
Mhm.
In 2024, from gas tax, we're planning to spend $1.5 million.
That is for the anticipated 7th Avenue PRVs and drainage, I think it is.
PRVs.
Pressure reducing valve.
That's sewer.
It's for the water system down Seventh Avenue, right when the Seven crosses the tracks. There's a PRV. And it's old, it's dangerous, and if it fails, it could damage a lot of homes.
And we're taking the gas tax because
We've tried twice to get infrastructure grants for it and been unsuccessful because the grants are tending more towards green infrastructure. But they're saying this basic infrastructure per municipality and gas tax is appropriated.
and our water reserves not being.
We have also been informed that gas tax funding that all communities receive. There's a number of communities that haven't been utilizing it. And if we don't start using it, they're not gonna give it to us anymore.
And remind me again, is there a specific purpose for the gas tax or can we spend it on anything we want?
No, there's a list of, it's pretty expensive. But there is a list of projects that are eligible to use gas tax funding. I'm happy to send it out to council after if you'd like, but you know, there's water, wastewater infrastructure, energy systems, garbage, recreation, tourism. There's a number of different, it's mainly infrastructure though.
Just no private jets.
Not that I found in here, no. There is some projects that are not eligible. Fire halls, fire trucks, EOCs, city hall, public works buildings, other administrative buildings, childcare centers, social housing, seniors care, healthcare, small equipment purchases, and then feasibility studies like, you know, to get shovel ready, those aren't eligible.
Those aren't eligible or are eligible?
Are not.
Okay, and the contributions towards these reserves that are on the first line, the transfers in, those amounts are set by policy, or is that just a number that helps us keep the reserve within that range as outlined in the policy?
It was determined by council back, I believe it was 2017. The amounts that are transferred in, so we have 100,000 going into our general reserve, roads reserve, recreation reserve, vehicle reserve. And then 25,000 each into water and sewer.
Right, and those transfers in the question whether those are sufficient aside from the policy that we currently have, that it should be somewhere between 2 and 5%. It's probably gonna get a little bit more color once we do capital asset master plan.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, any other questions about surpluses, reserves, Councillor Flaherty?
I just wanted to. There, sorry. Chair, through the chair. Just the water treatment plant compressor for the 51,000, is that the one that we approved previously, which didn't cost that much?
It is the one that you approved last year that, yes, didn't cost that much. We've actually just gotten the bill. I believe the Director of Public Works and Utilities is going to request to use the remainder to replace the other one as well.
Okay, Mayor Humble, clerk.
Can I just have a quote on the Seventh Avenue drain again? You said it was about how much?
1.5.
1.5?
Yeah.
And
That will likely increase. That's, I believe, 2020 estimates.
we have 1.8 and the closing balance on the gas tax. That's pretty close to all of it. And if I can ask another question, the grants, are any of these grants, which ones have we received? Do you know, offhand? And which ones are these all still in question? Except for the mezzanine chairlift, you said we did not receive that one.
We just got word on that.
Right, so that's 100,000 that we won't be getting for that one.
So on page 116 of the budget report, there is a list of the grants and their status.
And so,
It's
okay,
almost the last page.
okay. And their status. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Mayor?
Through the chair, on that 51,000, you were saying that, they want to buy another one, or are they going to repair the old?
I believe they did some repairs to the old one. There was $5,000 in the budget for repairs on the old one. But they do want to replace the old one before it fades. So they've replaced one, but there's two.
Yes. But the one they fixed will be a backup for the second. So we really need to spend that extra $25,000?
My understanding is even the fix is a Band-Aid. It's going to be a backup if everything goes to,
There'll be a report coming for that.
yes.
That's what I was saying.
You're not committing to it.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions with regard to surpluses and reserves? No? Okay. Then we'll go, Councillor Weed had a question about deficits in a lot of the accounts that we saw, and how we got that.
So through the chair, Council Review sent a list of the departments that had deficits. I crossed out some of them because they're the full departments. You have the other ones underneath. So economic development really doesn't have any internal revenue. It's all grant funded. But there are some expenses that we do have that aren't eligible for grant funding. So that's why that's in a deficit. The museum and Miyazaki House, they have no revenues. They only have expenses. So they're always in a deficit. Development services, the only revenue in that division is from application fees, DBPs, and all those that Kevin's way more familiar with. As well, we are using some of the COVID funding for 80% of the planning clerk wages. Public Works doesn't have a lot of revenue either. We get a small amount, less than 100,000 from our leases in the district office, and then less than $3,500 contribution for street lighting. Fire and emergency. The only revenue really is what we recover from our fire protection agreements with the First Nations and a small portion of the SLRD. Building inspection, again, the only revenue is from inspections. So there isn't a lot of revenue. And we are budgeting the grant funding again from COVID for 80% of the building inspector wages. By law, the only revenue is from dog tags. Not lockdown. Parks and Trails has no revenue at all. The campground is up a little bit. It is showing in a deficit this year. That's because council did increase the contractor fees last year by $13,000. I do expect with the increase in the fees and charges that we went through at the last meeting, I do expect that we will be not in a deficit. And then recreation services is, there's not one that's running in the red or black. Trying to cycle. Black.
So essentially, we're not really running at a deficit, but the deficit represents the portion of the expenses that is not covered by direct revenue, but is covered by taxes,
Correct. Yes.
taxpayer contribution.
Yes.
Answer the question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Very good. COVID-19 restart funding, Councilor Blank.
Okay, Chair, now is the funding factored into everything here in the financials, or is it like a separate ledger that we just?
No, through the chair, it's in the financial plan under grants.
Okay. Okay, so so what happens when this money runs out? Like when is it to run out? And I believe like, say we've got the planning clerk, which is being paid by COVID funding. So how much longer is that going on for? And then what other things are we paying through the COVID funding, which when that runs out, we're gonna have to be responsible for?
Yes, and very good point through the chair's word. The COVID funding is one-time funding. In a perfect world, it should be used for one-time expenses. We are using it for some wages. I know Jeremy did a lot of work talking them into that it was eligible to be used for that. We are gradually decreasing the portion of wages that are being funded by this, so that it's not just suddenly gone and now the taxpayers make it up. We're decreasing it so that the impact will be much less, or spread out. Thank you. And the only other thing that we're using it for right now, we do have a bit of still COVID effects here at the rec center. So we are anticipating to use about 25,000 of COVID funding for reduced sales here. And then to finish off the IT upgrades.
Yeah, okay.
But essentially, we're spending half of the remaining funds this year.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Councilor?
Yeah, sort of. I might get back to it. I gotta think a little more here.
Sorry, I should say as well that they are expecting that governments use it. I believe when they sent it out, it was within 3 years. But the pandemic did continue for almost a whole nother year after that. So I'm anticipating 4 years would be okay. But they do want it to be used up.
So we're in year 3 now. Is that what you were?
We're in our second year now.
Okay,
Sorry, I'm doing year end as well.
no,
So
okay,
yes,
I'm looking 2020 counting from there, but yeah, no, you're right.
yes.
Then onto Miyazaki House in the museum. I forget exactly who posed that question, but so.
I believe that was Councilor Mary. I like to make it easy for you guys to read. So these are the costs to the district for the museum and Miyazaki House. I know it says Museum and Visitor Center because it used to be this year it was different, or last year it was different. So on average, Miyazaki House costs the taxpayers about $15,000 a year. Again, on average, the Museum and Visitor Center cost about $27,000 a year. Moving the visitor center to the Miyazaki House, I don't anticipate that, that's about $40,000 for the department. I don't anticipate a big difference. It just might be more to the Miyazaki House than the museum. It just might change how it's allocated.
And the reason for moving it?
Yeah, it was a request from the societies. The historical society is going through revitalization. This one for the museum aspect. That very full mandate as a society is the historical aspect, which could include the museum. The information center was tacked on something like this. They found it beneficial, but it's not a full mandate as a society. So when they felt they needed to distance themselves from that, to focus on the core mandate, Miyazaki House stepped up to take on that. So there was a one-time funding.
Yes.
There, yeah, so this is last year. So there's a one-time, I think, $10,000 transfer to Miyazaki House to help them set up as the information center. So it's like stuff, structures. You don't expect that.
It's just that the Miyazaki House is kind of hidden where the kids live. It's like, I'd like to keep an eye on that, whether it's working or not.
They're planning on doing it again this year.
Yeah.
And now that they're set up from the beginning of the year, they're hoping to get more activity. People are going to tell us where it is. And there's arguably some validity in actually drawing people to a place that is a little bit out of the way. Because their GPS are going to show it there now. Now they're drawing them to an attraction that they might have otherwise missed.
I keep forgetting about that GPS thing.
But we shall see.
Councilor Rios.
To the chair, just curious as to why the insurance on the Miyazaki House would be higher than the museum when I would think they had more archives and whatnot. Be replaceable at the museum than to do it in Miyazaki.
I believe the museum has to have their own insurance as well. For the artifacts for their center.
Yeah, different agreements.
We insure the building and the property. We don't insure the contents.
Just seems like quite a difference. I'm just, yeah, okay.
Miyazaki House itself is a heritage structure,
Yeah.
whereas the museum's not a heritage structure. So for them, it's more of the contents, and that's all the society would insure. Whereas we're insuring the heritage structure itself for the Miyazaki House.
Okay, and through the chair, but Miyazaki House has their own insurance as well.
Do they not? Is that just liability or?
We didn't bring to agree.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all.
Where, salaries and wages for the museum and visitor center. 2022, $840. Whose wages?
They do often have to go over there to help deal with the, security, monitoring panels and stuff. And they do some minor repairs, around the properties.
Okay, so
This includes all the maintenance and up. Like.
The district does, yes.
Okay. Is there more maintenance and upkeep that the district doesn't?
I would imagine they probably like change their own light bulbs and,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
But. I'm not sure what the Miyazaki House, the Heritage Building, and a $26,000 budget, of which the majority actually goes to the Miyazaki House Society. Doesn't leave for much of a way of maintaining the building.
That's where they would work collaboratively with us. So for example, the latest interesting piece of maintenance we had to do is there was some serious vandalism in one of the doors. They were smashed. So we went and replaced, worked with them to replace the doors. So we had to pay that as part of the agreement. It's our building, so we pay for that. But they put in their time to help with it as well. It's a major structural refurbishment, which they know they need. That's what they work with us together to try to get grant funding.
The replacing roofs, painting, plumbing, that's all our responsibility.
Yes, and get a grant.
Things such as that, though, you wouldn't see in here anyway, they would be in the capital.
Very good. Okay. Councilor Mary, does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Mostly. Thank you. We'll go on to tilt funding, Mayor Hubble.
So I just wanted to say that, we're going through the SLRD budget tomorrow. But I believe that there's gonna be about $72,000 coming to Lillooet from the SLRD, from the tilt funding. Just like to say that I think that, Brad's idea of taking the heat that is going out of the arena and refunneling that to the pool to cut down our costs is something that I think that the tilt funding should go towards. So when this comes up in the budget, whether it be 90,000 or whatever the total cost is, I would like to see the tilt funding go towards that.
So through the chair, the PILT funding is already in our budget
Right.
as funding. So if council wanted to use that funding specifically for the heat recovery or anything like that, we need to come up with that additional funds somehow.
But I understood that the tilt funding goes into our operating budget, but if it's not used, then it just goes into reserves. Is that correct?
Surplus,
Or
yeah.
surplus?
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's
Typically-
not being used, I would like to see it. Because I think that what he's saying is a good idea, and in order for us to be able to do some of the things that we want with this rec center, we need to cut our costs, and that's one way of cutting our costs, wherever it comes from. But
So what you're suggesting then in, you know, when it comes to doing the financial plan would be, we would be taking it out of our accumulated surplus.
Correct.
And that's the one with the about $1 million in it.
Currently, the 99,000 for arena heat recovery, that's the project that we're talking about. It's coming out of the recreation reserve fund.
Yes.
So you wish to,
Well, I just think that it's something that we should talk about, and I think that I just wanted to put it on the table for whatever council decides.
okay. But my question, Mayor Huffle, is do you wish then, or is your suggestion to not use the funds from the recreation capital reserve, but instead use PILT funding?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's Peter and Paul, right? I mean, we could use this 99,000 out of the rec fund. And we could, or whatever it is, out of the rec fund, and then we could put back into the rec fund. Would that work? Or 72, I'm just saying that I just think that we should allocate and do something. Instead of taking it out of one reserve, like I said, Peter, Paul.
It really is, the end result is not going to change anything. You know, we're either gonna be using it out of accumulated surplus in the form of a reserve, or we're gonna be using it out of accumulated surplus in the form of unappropriated surplus.
That's right.
So
That's right.
it doesn't change the bottom line.
So,
I'm good with that. I just, like I said, I think it would be good for the SLRD to know that the money is going to something.
we put a plaque up.
No.
This arena recovery system has made possible by generous donation
We
from
can't afford that. No plaque.
just a piece of paper.
That's right.
I call stickies.
Sticky wicket.
Have to put up a post-it.
Right.
Councilor there.
Another thing I was thinking about,
We're not on to, we're on to PILT funding and we're not,
We're good.
we're good. Okay, we're good on
We're good.
PILT spending. Okay, we're gonna come to the pool in a little bit, Councilor McNary. We're first gonna go to tax exemptions and budget 2024, Councilor Weed.
Okay, through the chair. I'm gonna make myself look really like I've never paid attention in the whole time I've been on council. And I understand that, and I'm just fine with that. I have never realized, because we always just carried forward these exemptions for properties, be it the Curling Ring, church, whatever, there's numerous amounts, the Friendship Center. And I know for a few terms, I have been asking that we look at it in a percentage way. Then, after a discussion, I find out that when we give 100% exemption, the taxpayers of Lillooet still have to pay the portion to the SLRD, the school board, whatever else is on there. I was of the thing that we just gave our portion of the tax exemption. I did not realize that the taxpayers are picking up this other bill after the fact. So, that's why I'm saying it would come into play in 2024, because I know we don't address it again until the fall, I believe, or like summer, whichever. But I'd really like to have everybody think about doing it as a percentage rather than, yeah, we'll give them all 100%, because that's putting the expense back on the taxpayer once again. So it's kind of crippling us, I feel. And I don't know how we would do it in a fair way other than figuring out the percentages. Do we?
I have a way.
Okay, I would be really interested in hearing what that is, whether it's now or at that time. But I just really wanted it on the table because it's something that I never realized. I just thought, well, we okayed the exemptions, but that money was just everybody, you know, be it the SLRD or whatever, said, okay, we'll let them have that. No, but I did not realize that that still left a big expense to the taxpayer.
Very good point.
So through the chair, there's actually a whole lot of discussion going on about that right now, through the GFOA, government finance officers. And one of the ideas that's floating around right now is rather than permissive tax exemptions, to instead give them grants in aid. I don't have a better word for it. Where we would give them a grant equal to the amount of their municipal property tax. In that case, they don't pay taxes to us, but they're still responsible for paying their portion to the SLRD, to the hospital, to the VCAA. So that is an idea that has been floating around a lot of the finance forums. And I have actually, Jeremy even enjoyed my finance magazine, which has quite an interesting article on that I'm happy to send it to council as well. I believe I've sent it to the mayor.
Yeah, that was, like I say, I am remiss in 2 terms of council of not realizing that. So for the new councillor.
Give me all your words.
Okay, very good. So that will come back to this table when that decision comes up in the fall. And hopefully there's late summer, or hopefully there's a solution of some sorts from the GF way. Okay, there we go. Okay, water meters, Councillor Flynn.
Okay, through the chair, we've got budgeted here for $10,000 for water meters, which I know 10,000 really isn't that much in the grand scheme of everything. But why are we doing that if they're not operational, they don't work, they're outdated, and we can't read the things?
So through the chair, we actually do have, I believe it last year it was, and I believe it still is 22 commercial businesses that are billed by their water consumption. So we have to have meters in those 22 businesses to bill them for their water. Yes. And just like the rest of the water meters, some of those are coming to the end of their life or past as well.
That's what Eric.
The amount of money we get for our water meters that are being used, does it compensate for that $10,000, or are we? That's just like, the amount of money we make off the water usage, that $10,000, does that cover that, or does usage cover the $10,000?
So, and I can't give you exact numbers, but I'm just thinking of a couple different businesses that off the top of my head. And I would say $10,000, we would get that probably from less than 5 of those 22 businesses.
Okay, so we're not losing, it's not a,
It's not a
it's
losing.
not costing us money.
No,
Sorry, so there are 5 businesses that together pay more than $10,000 in water?
I would say yes.
No?
I was just
Okay. Right. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Very good. Then we go to the Growing Communities Fund contribution of $1.282 million. That wasn't contemplated in our budget.
Yes, so that grant funding is not in the budget right now. We were just made aware of it while you guys were at LGLA. We were anticipating, because we're one of the smaller communities, we were anticipating that we were gonna get, the minimum 500,000 that they had talked about. So we were quite surprised and happy to hear that we were getting just about 1.3 million. There's not a lot of information available on it yet. I keep going back on the provincial website and every once in a while they release a little bit more, but my understanding from the press releases so far is it's to be used for infrastructure. So it's not for operations. And the important thing in my opinion for council to remember when we get these unexpected windfalls, if you want to call it that, is that we're getting this one time. So depending on what you use it for, if you're using it for something that's not one time, then when it's gone, the taxpayers now have to make up for it. You have to get it from somewhere. So grants such as this are better utilized for these one-time projects, any of the projects on the list or the 5-year financial, or sorry, the 5-year project planning list. It's better utilized for something such as that.
Okay, but potentially we could do the Seventh Avenue PRV station with this funding and then leave funding as in gas tax, which we can spend on a larger variety of things. And we could also spend more over a longer period because that funding is available for a longer period. While this is just a one-time. Great. Anything else on the ideas on where to spend? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the chair. So now that I know we've been turned down for the Seventh Avenue, through grants. I know that twice. I know that we've been turned down for Russell Street. Twice.
Or three.
Three?
Now. Yeah.
Okay, we gotta be weakening them. I'm sure of it. So now that we have our asset management plan in place, how often can we apply for grant funding for like those two initiatives?
There's no limit on, there's no limit on how often you can apply for these grants. It's more about, are we ready? Do we have the shovel ready, project ready to go? And maybe we had it ready a few years ago in the first grant application, but as time goes on, the costs are dramatically different. I think we need to reevaluate those projects again, which that has to be funded ourselves. Something like the PRB and Russell Street, I would think that we would have the capacity to start doing that engineering now, so that we're ready for 2024. We could perhaps use this windfall 1.32 million to help fund one of those. It's also exactly the kind of projects, both of them are exactly the kind of projects that the gas tax is for, that core infrastructure. We can do it as installed, or council chooses to do that. But I wouldn't say that we're ready to tackle those as actual shovel in the ground projects this year. I think we need to focus on what the staff whittled down to what they realistically think we can accomplish in 2023. It seems we're already about to go into Q2. But
I mean, just in regards to your last comment, is that, I mean, we can sort of push this and say, we'll see how it's going to get spent, but we're making a budget for 2023 now, but also a budget for 2024, particularly for Q1, and we're still contemplating budgets for 2024. Do you have a suggestion of how we could just ensure that checks forward, even if it is doing some prep work in 2023, so that we're ready in 2024, even in Q1 to start dating as soon as the frost is out?
Yeah. Staff can bring suggestions either ourselves or as requested by council to do a budget amendment or that preparatory work. So we're giving us quarterly reviews of our strategic plan, so we're about done Q1, so very soon. Saying so accomplished so far, this is how we're feeling about income. So as we go through these, for any point, we just try to put on this. To say, council can give direction with that, going, I want you to come back with a report saying, what do we need to do to make Russell Street happen? And then, partly actually, the screen there would come in with the report saying, this is our estimated cost for the engineering, this is the timeline, and you can amend the budget to allow for that to occur right then. And in 2023, we'd be ready for it.
So, from what I gather from you, is that we can spend them, or we could start expenditures on this grant, even if it's not included into the budget 2023, because if we come with some, or if staff comes with proposals to tackle a bigger project, and we want to amend the budget to be able to spend some funds on prep work, on engineering, so that we're ready for 2024, that is possible.
And It's where you guys got the glorious job of approving the amendments from the last council.
All right. Anything else on the growing communities fund contribution of 1.282 million? There.
I was thinking of the water plant, what do we have in mind for getting the Dickey Creek, or not Dickey Creek? Town Creek back online? Is there anything planned there?
I know there was the water source strategy report that came to council in the summer. And yeah, we do have phase sort of 2 in the budget, which is actually developing a plan for the secondary water source.
That was-
Coming up with the costing and the engineering and the.
In progress.
It is in progress, and we're taking account that we do have some of the material and everything already, the filter system and all that. Yeah, I was just curious about that. It was just- To shut that other thing down.
Can we expect, maybe there's a timeline?
If Don Darling is there, if he has anything to add to the water source strategy. Mr. Darling, are you available?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah, what I was asked for in the budget is to put things in that we knew that we could get done this year. One of the things, there's a couple of things you asked about the PRV, what we're gonna do with that and Russell Street. And so those will be coming forward to council as additional ideas as the year goes on of money we should spend to maybe get ready for those projects. When we come to the water treatment plant, it is kind of like a 3-phase project. It is, the first phase is done. We have the source water strategy done. We are working with, and I believe it's included in the budget, to do the second phase, which will look in more detail what the actual costs of tying in Town Creek and 2 additional infiltration wells down at the water treatment plant. What that'll do is if we proceed to construction, it'll take the pressure off the filtration system, and then that's the next thing that would be looked at over the next few years. But the problem with the filtration system is the fine siltation that's coming in off the creek, how to deal with the intake and how to deal with the infiltration system. So it's felt, and in the report, it said that the best thing to do is to have the Town Creek and the infiltration wells looked at first. So the next phase, which will be done this year and be brought forward to council, will be more detailed information, more accurate costs, so that we could proceed to construction next year, hopefully.
Yes, it's not about the water treatment plant, it's about this, funding. 1.28 million, the gas tax funding, like, we can't put that into reserves, can we? So would we not be better off to kind of make a decision on where to spend it instead of taking like airport upgrades out of reserve funds? I'm just curious, or can we put gas tax money into reserves?
Gas tax actually has to go into a reserve. There is a gas tax reserve here.
Yeah.
So we get about 170,000 a year. And that goes directly into the gas tax reserve.
But this 1.28 million, can it be divvied into reserves if we're still taking money out of reserves, or would we be better to actually look at using it and spending it?
Oh,
Projects.
I see. So it can't be used to fund your reserves.
Right.
So no, we can't put it into our reserves. It really, it's either way. I can't say makes a difference.
No, I understand that part, but if you've got 1.28 million and you cannot put it into a reserve, but you're taking, say 208,000 just roughly for the airport upgrade out of reserves, or part of it out of reserves, and the other is hopefully a grant that maybe we get, maybe we don't. Would it not make more sense to use that money rather than taking it out of reserves and just
It, again, I would agree,
Okay,
but some would not.
okay.
Yeah, there's no perfect answer to that one.
Well, as long as you agree with me.
All right, so we'll move on. Investment policy and expected returns from the $12.5 million that we have in cash that while it's been allocated and appropriated, we can't touch it. We can put it into something that makes it that generates interest. Right now, the budget is based on a 2% return, 3% return, I forget.
I'm sorry, off the top of my head, it's just blown my mind.
Okay, yeah, and but currently the high interest savings accounts are generating over 5%, and with that in mind, I think the budget for the interest revenues that we're projecting is very, very conservative. And I would like to make a recommendation to make that more in line with what we're actually getting. And if we're not getting 5%, then I think we should move our funds into a place where we do get 5%, because the Municipal Finance Authority is currently offering a 5.05% on any deposit, and that is no risk. It's not like a money market, but it's just a high interest savings account. So that would be my suggestion.
I have an investment policy. It's like 3/4 done in draft form. Between budget, audit and year end, it hasn't made it to council yet. So it is on my radar, absolutely. But it just hasn't happened yet.
Or do we need to put money into a high interest savings account?
Best practice, yes, is that we do have a investment policy. It outlines, there are regulations as well in the community charter and what we can invest in. And those are all outlined in the policy. So it is best practice that we do, yes. It also gives direction to staff of what council sort of determines priorities on investments are. Some councils are all about returns, not so worried about risk. Other councils are all about just keep my principal safe and let's make a little bit of interest. So it's kind of all across the board, and it does provide some direction and help to staff when we have to look at investments.
Okay.
Then we can change your attitude on. And we can change your attitude on anytime we like.
On a policy,
Yes.
through the proper procedure,
It's,
yes.
I'm pretty conservative. These guys are lucky.
And I understand, investment policies, particularly when we're talking about risky investments going into Bitcoin and that sort of stuff. It's always better to have a proper vetted policy that's carried by council. But a high interest savings account is just a savings account. It's backed by CITC. It's as safe as Bank of Canada. Look, so like I said, I think it's just a waste of taxpayers' opportunity to have 12.5 million sitting in a bank account that is not generating what we can in another financial institution with the same sort of risk profile. So, and like I said, I mean, this is about the budget. This is not necessarily about moving funds, but I would like to see a return on our budget. Doesn't come with the policy. Any thoughts, comments?
He's trying to keep us on your line for a year, so.
I'd say that we hear you loud and clear. We have to take direction from the local council, and that's why policy is the best way to get that direction for us, for consistency and clarity. Staff could make a best decision at any point. Without that policy guidance, it's risky for us, it's risky for the organization. So rather than just making professional opinion decision to change from one banking institution to another, to rebalance how we invest that money, how we move that money, our CFO is doing the right thing, taking a little bit of time, having a wholesome conversation with the whole council about the big picture question of how do we handle this 12 month. What percentages go into one, what's the risk of a as of so it's months away.
Yes.
In here.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
So it's not a lifetime away.
It's $120,000 per 100 basis points. Okay, so for every percent more in interest, you can get 4% instead of 3%, it's $120,000. Which I find to be a lot of money.
A month is it?
Was that?
A month?
No, free. $120,000. $1 million.
I think I'm wrong, but I'd say it's pretty high on the CFO's radar as a priority. But we do have to get through the budget process and we do have to get through the audit. Get the capacity to really focus on it, bring you a good quality report.
Okay. Service levels on road maintenance, Mayor Hoffman.
So over the past few years through the chair, I have been listening to comments about like Cooks Road and Airport Road. I went for a walk up in Airport Road not too long ago, but it was no use because everything was frozen over and flipped line. However, that being said, I know that a lot of people that live on those roads would like some sort of maintenance done. They don't feel like they're getting the maintenance, and because they're gravel roads, I think they deteriorate obviously a lot faster than our normal roads. So I did talk to Mr. Deniger about a year ago about if we could contract that out or how much that would cost, or you know, if we could spend a bit of money just trying to keep these roads. And so I'm not sure what maintenance they get right now. They've talked about seal coat. There was supposed to be 2 coats of seal coat done years ago on Cooks Road. There was one done and the second one was never done. And I'm not sure what Airport Road had, and I'm sure that there's other roads around here too. So I would just like to ask again through the chair what that would look like.
I'll invite Mr. Darling to type in if he has anything to say about road maintenance, because I don't know off the top of my head how much we maintain a particular road. I do know that he's working with staff right now to do an evaluation of the quality of the roads. If we can come back to council as promised in the strategic plan or a prioritization of road repair work. But the maintenance question, non-strategic plan, but maybe it'd be something that Mr. Darling could have talked about during this process of evaluation.
Mr. Darling.
Yeah, as far as the maintenance of roads, there's very limited staff, so the maintenance is really, you know, at a minimal. I'm working with the public works foreman right now to do, you know, to identify roads with, to do some overlay paving. And as part of that, we can look at the, what is it, Cooks Road and Airport Road, to see what it would cost to seal coat those roads or improve them. And then we can improve that. The idea is we're going to identify some roads, let council know what our plan is, and then go out to a tender so we could include those in as part of that discussion and then decide whether you want to spend the money on those roads or some other ones that we've identified. So.
That would be great. Thank you. And like, is it possible when it goes out to tender, if, so say Joe Blow is living on Joe's Road and he says, hey, I can grade this road. I can do it for $5,000. I've got all the machinery. I can do this. Is that something that we could look at because we're short staffed, because we, you know, could we draw up a contract to do that?
So if I understand correctly, you're asking if we could have private individuals look after the maintenance of roads?
I'm asking you if we could drop a contract to maybe grade a road twice a year. Yes,
Yeah, we definitely could do that.
okay.
Yep. Yeah,
All right,
but then
so-
it would add cost to, like, I'm looking at that $180,000 or whatever that we have in the paving budget. If you want additional maintenance added, then that would add cost to the maintenance side of Public Works, the operations side.
Right,
But we could bring that information back to you and let you know what it would cost.
okay, but maintenance, I mean, because our normal roads, do they require a lot of maintenance? Other than potholes and, I don't know, debris, as opposed to a gravel road?
Well, they don't require a lot of maintenance because they're falling apart. So they're not being
Right.
maintained properly, and that's why we're looking at spending this money, but it's what we'll bring back is a priority to council, and council can decide where they want to spend the money on, and if you think these other gravel roads are more important than the roads identified in the downtown core, then that's up to council and that's what we will do. But, you know, I agree with you. It's probably better to allow additional monies in the maintenance to deal with these gravel roads and then have the paving deal with the roads that are downtown and have them repaved. But we'll bring a report back and we're working on it right now, so it shouldn't be that long for that report to come back.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Darling. Sorry, Councilman Mayor.
In here somewhere, I can't find it. There's a use for contractors. In here for like digging up the pipelines and stuff like that, but something like that can come. Could that, grading those roads not go into that part of it? It's a contractor for the maintenance of the road, I think.
We do budget for contracted services each year. If council was asking that we add additional maintenance to specific roads or something like that, then we would have to add additional budget for.
We'd have to add more to that, like,
Yeah.
is there no surplus left on that each year, Joey, or something like that, like with the snow removal or?
As
It's a.
those are, they really are. Until the end of the year, a lot of times we don't know how it's gonna shake out.
Just a thought.
Councilman Reed?
Through the chair. I can't remember, I know a ways back there at one of the council meetings, well, it wasn't that far back because it was Councilor Bruin that had brought it up. About us. I think we wanted a policy, or you had mentioned a policy of some sorts where we just allot so much to Public Works for roads and they decide what to fix. And I really like that idea rather than bring these roads to me and I'm supposed to decide. Like, I don't think that should be my job. And I don't really want it as part of my job. So I just wondered, did that go any farther or was it just something that was discussed?
The last I'm aware of that policy is there is a roads maintenance policy that exists. And the last attempt to use that policy by staff to justify paying with the road bid. Because council was not comfortable with their policy. So the approach this year is to re-examine, which is exactly what Don Darling and staff are doing. And to bring back recommendations for the near term. And if there's direction from council at that point, or maybe in future strategic planning discussion, that, okay, we like this approach that you're taking, now make that policy, I think we should re-examine it every election cycle. But there's certainly value in council looking at these strategies for road maintenance and repair. Because sometimes there's a political aspect to repair. Staff don't look at it, we go, this road's bad, that road's good. From a very technical perspective. But there may be other factors that we think of, so I think there's value in that. From council sometimes at least.
I just wasn't sure if that policy suggestion had gone in wherever it was reviewed.
Councilor Platt?
Through the chair, I'm not actually sure if this is the right place, but it probably is the right place, especially well. Even before I came onto council and since I have been elected to council, whenever we talk about anything for like roads or this, that, and it's not accusatory or anything, but everything is the excuse is we do not have enough staff. So I know we're trying to cut things here, but why has this been such an ongoing problem for so many years that we haven't been trying to find the money to add staff? As I said, before even going for council, it was always when something came up, we don't have enough staff. So why has this gone on so long? And we're not talking like I know with the public works and that we've been. Yes, please.
Means to hire more staff. And the financial means is property taxes. So unless there's an appetite to increase taxes, you can't provide more services. And as a government, like any business, most businesses, the services come from people working and people don't work for free. So we do the best we can based on prioritization, the limited resources we have in people. People are limited by the funds we have available to us, which are decided by council and chief budget process. And we have to recognize we are a small community and we're not the only one in this boat.
We're kind of damned if we do or don't, because we have the public yelling that this has not been done or that has not been done. But on the other half, we have to raise taxes to be able to do that. So
But just to clarify, I think, or if I guess questioning, I don't understand, but Public Works has a number of vacancies that are fully funded. And if we would have, so it's not a question that we don't have the funds to hire, but we just can't fund people. If we had those people hired, the service level would have gone higher because then we're fully staffed. We have the people in place to be able to provide the level of service that is congruent with the budget. The budget indicates a service level. If we are able to hire the people, and you have the funds for that. So I don't necessarily agree with Mr. Dennegar's comment that we don't have the funds, because I think we do have the funds. The budget includes funding for public work operator, foreman, and other folks that could contribute towards a higher service level. Yes.
The reality has shown us that what we have budgeted isn't attracting qualified candidates. So in theory, there's the money for the role. But the people we're getting applying for these roles are woefully underqualified. So we could hire a completely unqualified, unexperienced manager or director of public works, and then probably cause more damage. We're doing the best we can with some very experienced contractors to try to work under all Craftsville. We've been looking for a utility 2 operator for months and months, and we're not getting it because we're doing the best we can to train them from within, but otherwise not getting competitive. Again, we're not the only municipality in this boat. I think we're just one of the most small municipalities are Swiss cheese with staff right now. A lot of points right across the province.
Okay, Councilor Mayor.
I'm gonna stick up for Mr. Dunn a little bit because we cannot afford the wages that guys are getting now in the other world. It's incredible. Like, incredible. A mechanic like myself, they get $50 an hour. How can we afford that for somebody? And I don't know what these other people are, and to get qualified people, you're impossible. Our new millennials don't want to work.
Okay, Councilor Flynn.
through the chair, I guess what I was getting is I realize about for our public works and all of that. I was thinking more from whenever I've heard that we don't have the staff. I was thinking more of QP members who are actually out there not looking at upper management or whatever there, which is where we've sort of gotten off there, but I'm thinking of adding more QP or whatever, because that's where they're the people who are out there fixing our potholes and that. And as it's been said before, like we were putting out so many fires that, not fires literally, but doing everything. So like last year for the summer, the roads weren't done, the weeds, like everybody was complaining how neglected the town looked. So that's what I was getting at with the excuse that we don't have enough staff.
But that one, there's two things there, if I may.
Yeah, please.
Sure. One, recently there has been an issue with being unable to get summer students. Well aware of that issue. Moving through filming and just weren't getting applicants. So most of that summer maintenance, the meeting and that kind of caretaking that our community's been used to simply hasn't happened through COVID because of the CRP payments or whatever. People didn't feel interested in these jobs. So we didn't have that extra summer student staffing to help with those little tasks that aren't normally something that are staffed in. So yeah, very visibly noticeable. We have applied for help and
We've applied for 4, public works, 2 for the rec center, and I believe that's it.
so if people apply for those summer student jobs, we should see that very visible maintenance work improve this summer. But we're at the wing of the job market for that. So that's the one side, is that very visible, which I'm thinking you've probably been hearing from people saying, but yeah, if you go talk to public works staff, why does it look shoddy if all these weeds being grown? You're gonna hear them saying, we don't have the staff, because they don't have the summer student staff. Broader picture operationally, all QB regular staff, we only have 1 vacancy right now, so it's an operator, it's an important role, trying to fill it, trying to train up. But if on a regular basis, outside of summer, council wants to see a higher service level for road maintenance, give us that direction, we will come back with a service level increase in the financial plan, which will of course have a cost associated.
So,
No, I know.
Through the chair, I think too, over the years, sitting in this seat, and I'm sure Mayor Hopkins will agree with me, we have become a training ground where we get someone at the lower level, we train them up, and they just go on to somewhere where they get better paid for a level 2 operator than what we would get here. Like it's like you have a whole bunch of balls in the air, and which one's gonna fall off. I think we had a few move on, like, okay, they've got their training and we're doing good, and bang, they're gone.
Unlike the army, we got forced to stay.
No.
Is there any way that we could, get a contract of the NHL or something, that they gotta stay for so many years if we pay for their training and whatnot?
The collective agreement does outline some, reimbursement, scenarios for that kind of situation. But we have to follow what's in the collective agreement.
And that's not in there.
There are some in there, yes.
So we got a question. If I hear correctly, we have a few vacancies within the organization. When we have budgeted payroll for wages. What you're saying is that the wages that we have budgeted for are too low to attract people to come in those, work in those roles. The consequence is that they remain vacant, that we remain understaffed, not able to provide the service levels that we are hoping for. That we have a surplus at the end of the year because we haven't spent those wages. But we also don't have the people. Is it then not maybe just better than to budget for, or could you provide council with an indication of how much it would, what the increment is in order to get someone into that role? Because I mean, it's like, if we've budgeted $40,000 for wages for this role, and we just need $4,000 more in order to fulfill it, then, you know, it's either spending 4,000 more and getting the service level, or having 40,000 left over at the end of the year, if we haven't spent the wages and have service levels where people are unhappy.
That would be part of my exempt staff salary. Should be coming to council in close to 80%.
But we're not just talking about exempt staff, are we?
Those are the big holes right now in terms of being able to get projects done and to manage staff. It's hard to manage a fully staffed department with no manager. So those are sort of critical right now. And but fortunately, we've got Von Darby, Public Works. He has a team of experts assisting him so that we do hope to continue being able to do projects. As for ongoing filling the role, we had one qualified candidate. I would hesitate to just throw more money at the role without doing a significant amount of research to make sure that we're not wasting money on the role either. People come to communities for a number of reasons, not just the salary. There would be an analysis at some point if this doesn't get fixed or become a problem.
Okay, Mayor.
Through the chair. And just tell me if I step over or on the fence or where it should be closed, just cut me off really quickly. So talking about a service level, I know that our garbage truck done by the district, that service level generates about $75,000 a year, but it also takes 2 public works people at 3 days a week. Is that correct? I'm just thinking that would, yeah, I mean, if we're looking for more public works, is that an option? Because I know, again, that 75,000 is generated is only good until we need a new garbage truck. Because I don't think that's covered in the budget.
So I could bring this really high level, so we're careful not to go away.
Right, so
Yeah.
I'm trying to be careful.
Yeah, so
We're
it-
talking about a service level and having said that if that service level was contracted out, perhaps whoever was to contract that could bring in a higher service level by providing blue box or recycling or something more than what we can afford to offer, so. Again, just
We're on the same place.
If we're going to talk one specific thing, can I please myself?
Yeah.
My husband does work for but
Right, just so- Okay, no, I'm talking about a service level, I'm not talking about any jobs, I'm just talking about a service level
Yeah, so
of income in our budget and public works and what we're short, and just,
yeah, I hear you. So that's an example. I'm not gonna go into that example. I'm gonna say very high level. For public works, we are looking right now at a number of options to shift duties, roles, and contracting your staff. It's actually across a couple departments to see if there's a way to make it more cost effective and or get better service. Affecting staffing levels, potentially just find better efficiency. That's actually being looked at through a number of departments right now. So your example would be perhaps one of those things that we're looking at.
right, just in service level. Yeah, okay, excellent, thank you.
Okay, we started this entire conversation about service levels in on road maintenance and involved sort of. Are there any additional comments or suggestions or desires that we want to see budget in that regard? If none, then we can just move on. And A pool opening and contribution from swims, Councillor Flynn and Councillor Weed. Can I see that, Joni?
So, again, to be clear, the budget as it sits right now does include a 10-month pool opening. Okay. I laid out, sorry for those of you, the numbers are a little fuzzy, but 2021 costs for running the pool, approximately 175,000. The district funded about 139, SLRD 20, and swims about 15,000. In last year, 2022, total costs were about 294,000. Of that, the district funded about 188 and swims about 106. We have physically received from swims in dollars in our hand. 30,000, about 30,000 in 2021, another 130 last year. So a total of about $160,000 that we've like physically held in our hands. Of that, again, we've used about 16,000 in 21, 106 in 22, and then there was a small cost for some special insurance they needed for some programming, $160. So we still physically have $37,000 in funding of the money that swims raised. My understanding is swims raised about $200,000. They have contributed already to us about 160. So I would assume that they have about $40,000 left in their account of that money that was raised. Taking the 38,000 that we still have, the 40,000 that I imagine they still have, there's about $78,000 in funds available. The $38,000 that I said we physically have right now, that is what is shown in the budget.
What was that last number I was writing?
Which one?
The one that you got in the budget right now.
It's the 37,646.51.
Okay.
With the big red arrow.
That's what we have remaining.
No, that's what I have put in the budget because that's the funds that we physically have right now.
And you add them all together, comes up to $78,000.
Assuming that they still have about $40,000 of the 200, yes.
Councillor there.
If we cut back a month in the front, a month in the back. And put in that, heat exchange thing. Which is worth $90,000 for that, so. What would the cost savings be on that? On the taking a month at each end of them off? And plus the new heating system? Would that help us out on our savings for what our budget is and whatnot? And how much would that come back there? Could we make up that $90,000 or what we were talking about for putting that heat exchanger?
So. Really hard to answer that because it depends entirely on which month you choose, right? But. So last year, 2022, it cost just under $300,000. Say for the whole year, it was for a 10-month opening, but over the whole year, it cost just under $300,000. So divide that by 12, you're about 25,000 a month.
Maybe Brad would have a better idea on that.
Yeah, because I'm wondering where this 294 is coming into play. That sounds like that's all energy costs for the entire building being included,
That's from the spreadsheets that have been sent to swims.
which includes the energy costs.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah,
Yes.
that are for the entire building, not just the pellet cost that's being billed to swims.
No, the swims pellets are further down.
Right. But you're applying the hydro and the propane as well? For the entire building, just to the pool?
No, that's what we're paying. For. Swims is not paying anything towards hydro, propane.
Right, but there's no breakout for hydro to go to the pool or for propane to go to the pool.
No, because we used to have an allocation of, I believe it was 24.2% of the hydro, and I can't remember the exact numbers. It was determined that that was unfair. So that allocation has been taken out. Now I have to consider all of the utility costs on a whole. And is it higher or lower than we used to have before the pool was open for 10 months? If it's higher, like with the pellets, we usually had about 7 deliveries a year. This year we had 10, so those 3 extra deliveries was taken out of the SWIMS contributions.
Right, but the hydro and propane have been lower than in the past.
The hydro, I just checked it to the end of the year, and it was like right on the border, so. But propane was lower than in the past, yes.
My question is, if we cut back a month in the run, so that'd be June and September from their 10 months and make it 8 months for this year, get our heat exchanger in the plant, get it going, and then see what the program is after that. Like we can get, what's a load of pellets worth?
A lot.
Well, some about over 7,500 nowadays.
7,500, so say you're rounded at $8,000. For the ton of dust there, so that's 16,000 loads right there. Pellets. Propane. It's an idea, I think we should look up. That guy over there in the corner might be able to figure something out for us and give you a rating.
And Councillor Weed.
Through the chair, what I wanted to suggest was, and it's mainly because of the programs, right now we have a program director and all of this thing, and we're training lifeguards and, we've got a lot of different programming going. So I was thinking, yes, if the district keeps the pool open for 8 months, and possibly if there's a conversation or some kind of negotiation with SWIMS to pay for 2 months so that it's actually open the full 10 months. And then you have your 2 months off in the summer to do your maintenance on the pool and your heat exchange or whatever it is. I can't see it taking 4 months, but I don't know that SWIMS would be willing to pay for 2 more months of the pool, but my mind is thinking on the more you close it, the less likely you're gonna have lifeguards. They're just not gonna be there. That was all I wanted to say about the pool. And I don't know if we can negotiate with, I'm assuming that you should negotiate. Because they will. I think it's unfair for the district to expect a not-for-profit society paid for facility that the district owns. We don't expect the heritage people or whatever they're called to pay for the museum. We don't expect the Miyazaki Society to pay for the Miyazaki House. We actually, right? So, but I do think that they would be willing to kick in for 2 months. I think it's worth a conversation. I have it over for the 10.
So again, the budget is for a 10-month opening.
Yes, I realize that. I just, we've had a few conversations where it's always the pool people against mayor and council and mayor and council against the pool people. And I think it's unfortunate that it's got to that, because as soon as we're looking at reducing taxes, that's the first place we look. we don't look at all these other things. We automatically go to, well, pool's really expensive, so let's chalk the time in the pool. That's where I'm coming from, sitting in this chair. That's what I get, is that we constantly want to close the pool, which I don't think that any of us actually wants to do. And I think if we could negotiate part of the funding to cut down on 2 months on our budget, it would be worth the conversation.
Okay. Before but just to reiterate what, Ms. LaRue's point is that at this point, it's fully funded, including contribution of $37,000 from SWINS, which we already have. And, which we can have discussions with SWINS, but they're an independent company, they're an independent organization, and it's their prerogative to spend the money in whatever way they feel like, and whether or not they give it to the district or pool funding or buy floaties or whatever, that is their prerogative. But if we, at this point, reduce the service levels in the pool, we're gonna generate a higher structural surplus.
And then we can spend that $100,000 to,
No, the $99,000 is already in the budget.
it's in the budget.
It's in the budget. It is going to be there. It is like, it's a no-brainer, right? It's on that big sheet, the third line from the bottom. That is coming, and it's going to help reduce operating expenses likely in 2024 or the winter of 23-24, whatever the thing is. Okay.
Okay, through the chair, I'd actually like to ask, Brad, how long would that take to have that heat, what do you call it, a heat exchanger? How long would that take to put in throughout the whole rec center?
Like from the time they actually started
Right,
constructing it,
yes,
a couple of weeks probably.
couple of weeks. And and I agree with Councilor McNary in going with 8 months, because I think that will make a big difference. And I would like to see us reduce our budget by the 2 months, open the pool for 8 months, put the exchanger in whenever we can fit it in. We might have to close the pool anyways to do all this. And I think by the fall, if we have it in, we'll notice that difference. We'll have some savings, and I think that we can look at it then, but I think that we should go for 8 months. Okay.
Sorry.
I
I should say with that heat exchanger, the refrigeration plant project that's currently underway, we are coming in under budget on that. So there has been discussion, Brad is going to try and get the scope of that project, correct, the refrigeration, to get the scope of that project changed, so we can maybe do that heat exchange under that grant program.
Councilor Flynn?
Through the chair, sort of everything that everybody said was actually where I was gonna go with things originally here. Personally, I am liking what I was gonna suggest is going the 8 month, cutting it on either end, as Councillor McNary said, so closing it from having it closed June, July, August, and September. I know how Councillor Weeb has been saying that SWIMS thinks that council keeps targeting them and it's not worth it, but my thinking is this is the perfect time, because any project, if we are putting something on either side, things can go wrong. So if you're doing too tight of a schedule there, if something doesn't work properly, it may be more than 2 weeks. I actually thought with Mr. Gilbert there, when we did the facility tour, we'd originally said maybe a month to do it. So now you're saying 2 weeks.
That would be conservative, right? But if you're wanting to say, how much would it actually probably really take?
Yeah.
I'd say 2 weeks, but you'd want to.
Yeah, you want that,
Time.
that buffer on either side. I feel it would be unfair to be asking swims to, because by the sounds of it, they've only got maybe about $40,000 left in their budget from their, yeah, thank you, fundraising there. I kind of feel it would be unfair to ask them to pay for those other things, because I know that they had said in their presentation that they were wanting to bring other programs into the pool. So that would be using those funds that they have remaining, that they wouldn't be able to afterwards to be able to bring in those other programs. So I don't feel we're targeting swims if we do want to close it for the other 2 months, but in the grand scheme of things, once we've got the heat exchange in and all the rest of that for next year, things should run smoother so that it can be left open, hopefully for a longer time. So to make concessions, yeah, we're not targeting anybody, but we're looking at the next thing for things to run smoother and leaving them still part of their budget that they can run their other programs that they are wanting to run.
I'm gonna go to Mr. Gilbert.
Thank you. Through the chair.
Very in the dark.
So through the chair, as mentioned earlier, there was $41,000 in lost revenue to the rec department since COVID. About 102,000 of that has been reallocated through the COVID startup fund. Roughly for the pool itself specifically, about $23,500 has been lost over the past 3 years. But none of that COVID funding has been specifically allocated to the pool. It's been allocated to general administration, the main core and the arena, and the us versus them mentality of not giving to the pool. The pool is the only place that has not had any of that COVID funding applied to it. So I would suggest applying some of that $25,000 this year, if not the whole thing, to the pool and show that you're working with swims. That'd be my recommendation. Also, it should be noted that since COVID, taxation for the pool has been collected, and then that service has not been able to be provided through no fault of anybody's. Right, so back in 2020, roughly $46,000 was taxed. Only a little over 4,000 was actually spent on little projects. And then in 2021, 58,875,000 was taxed to the taxpayer, and we actually recognized a profit of 7,500 for the pool. Although we have tweaked how some of those numbers have worked out since then to help distribute the pellet costs to swims over those few years. But there has been money that's been taxed on the taxpayer and not spent for that specific service since COVID. The other thing that always gets overlooked for Parks and Recreation is the valuation that Parks and Recreation adds to every property. The study showed that the closer you are to a park, the higher your appraisal rate is. And so in a small community like this, where you have no private leisure services, there's no bowling alley, there's no movie theater, the recreation center is your social hub. Without that, every home, every business evaluation or assessment comes down, so do your taxes. It's a little thing that people need to consider when they're thinking about taking away from Parks and Recreation. They're actually robbing wealth from their home.
Through the chair to Mr. Gilbert, with the programming that we have for the pool and the people that you have working specifically in the pool, the lifeguards, I don't know, jazzercise, whatever they're doing over there. What are the chances of them still being available? Because there again, I don't want to be losing staff for the sake of 2 months. That's what my concern is.
Yeah, we sort of have.
Right, like, is there other places you can use those staff people to keep them here? So that if we close 4 months, they're still going to be here when the pool is open. That's my concern.
Whether it's the full 4 months, the 2 months is easy, because that's over the high school summer break. And then that's where you can take those high school students and put them into your program leader roles. 4 months, that's more for the university students. We have university and college students returning. and then maybe get them working in, and we don't actually take over parts, so, in public works, parts, staff, so they could try and transfer from one department to another.
Through the QP contract, can they do that? Because they're two different QPs, aren't they? Well, they're all the same, but two different, whatever. I get confused
It
on
would
why.
be complicated but possible.
I'm just, like I say, because I know that becomes an issue with service levels with public works. I hate it to become an issue with service levels at the rec center because we've lost staff.
Your recommendation for this yourself, you work here, what would be your recommendation on it? Because I know if you put that heat exchanger in, the plant's gonna run in order to check it out and the rest of it. Would you be better off? Which way, June, September?
Probably play it safe on the back end.
So you'd be better off in September then, and leave June on? Like, I just wanna know what your recommendations.
Definitely keep, July and August down, and then probably, well, no, June is the end of the school year, that's when the classes like to come in and do their year-end parties, but probably give up September first, because when parents are starting to ramp up for school, everything else kind of takes a back seat to it, so even hockey registrations, swim class registrations, that's almost like the last thing on the parents' mind, they're getting their kid up and going into school.
That would be your recommendation?
Yep.
Like take, July, August and September off, 3 months.
Just gonna jump in now. I am very concerned about the loss of staff. And I like the idea, yes, let's give them something else to do. Right now, staffing costs are 68% of the cost of the school. So if we slice off a couple months of the pool, that includes the staffing costs. So one is left to do funding. And we've been struggling and trying to build this momentum of having a reliable pool schedule, which allows for programming in the future. You have to program these things out in the future. It's been incredibly stressful and difficult for staff to even know this year, how can the program, how does students help with the program, what grants do we go after? If we don't know what the pool schedule is going to be, or if it's too short of a schedule, then we don't know if we're going to have lifeguards or quality supervisors. Because if we're cutting the budget, we're cutting staff budget too.
To kind of jump in on the further the grant one anyways, for council through the chair. We have received $15,000 in grant money, through the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association for what we deem like free try-it programs. And the way the budget is broken down for that would cover $7,500 in pool rentals, about $4,500 for arena rentals, and roughly $2,250 for the gym rentals. So there's another $7,500 in revenues that's not accounted for yet in the budget.
Through the chair, Mr. Gilbert, I may have misunderstood, but then you were saying just previously there about we did close for those couple of months there. You were talking about your high school students and your university students not having jobs or working. Would that not, I don't know if we could do it, but would that not fill in the space that we're not able to get summer students for public works, that they could be working for public works during that time, seeing that we can't seem to get summer students for that. So then we wouldn't really be losing anybody. We'd just be reassigning them to a position where we haven't been able to fill.
Same person, but two different positions instead of just one position.
Yeah, and then we're covering the public works summer program, which we haven't been able to do, while we're still keeping those people for when we do, if we did do this when we reopened.
Yeah, in fact, one of our young operators right now was also a grass cutter for Public Works.
Mhm.
So your recommendation, we could get away with July, August and September this year. Would that be your recommendation or would that be okay or? Would you put the-
I'm
One
fine with
your
recommending
opinion?
okay. There's nothing wrong with okay, you know,
No,
I know that awesome is even better, but no, 9 months is still quite a good starting point.
It will,
Or
was this for their grants or nothing like that? Like they were talking about some grants or something when they were here.
I don't think it would hurt them too much on the grants, because what they're really looking for doing is renting the pool and running their own programs. And so right now, to my knowledge anyways, they don't have any bookings anyway, so as far as I'm concerned from that, and they don't have a solid plan on what programs they're actually going to try and run, let alone how long to run them. So if we came back and said we're going to stay open for 9 months, the loss of 1 month probably isn't gonna scare them or annoy them or anything.
I'm not gonna cry anymore, I'm sure.
I'm trying to-
No, I'm just
I
budgeting.
just know from being on
Yeah.
council over the years, and I'm sure Mayor Hoffel will say the same thing, that it's like, they feel like we've targeted them or
And the only thing we can tell them is that we want to put this heat exchanger in, and then it will reduce our costs, and they can stay open possibly 12 months next year.
Yeah, because I wouldn't be surprised if the cost savings from that per year is going to be the equivalent of 2 operating months for the pool.
You think it's gonna be that low?
Again, I put that on the conservative side, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm also thinking in terms of like the net expense of the pool on a month. Historically, so when we were discussing that the last time, there was also $25,000 in revenues that would knock down the net operating costs of the pool to the district. And so that was, when you include that, Jen's number of 10,000 per month is actually a bit on the high side.
I agree with you. Rec center is very important. It's one way or the other. Just trying to, we're looking at it's about an 8% or 8% tax rate. What can we do?
I don't think, you're scared of the taxpayers.
Yeah, or whatever, like, how can we kind of justify to them people that, okay, we're gonna shut it down for an extra month or 2 months or whatever. And then put this heat exchanger in, and then it's gonna be more cost effective for everyone. That's,
Yeah, I don't think a 1 year hiccup is going to worry them more than the long-term sort of stability of being able to re-examine a 10-month season after you've had a 1 year sort of pilot project with the heat recovery.
okay.
I can sell that.
If I may, through the chair. What is council trying to accomplish out of all of this? Like, are you trying to save money, obviously? What is the end goal from this whole discussion?
Go ahead, girl.
Well, my end goal is that historically, we have funded the pool, 2 months of the year?
Between 3 and 4.
3 and 4 months
Yeah.
a year. My end goal is to find a way that the community can fund the pool for a longer period of time at a reduced cost. That's my end goal. So, but for this next year, being that we don't know how much we're going to be able to reduce our costs, it is to do this heat exchanger, the pool down to what we can afford, keep our taxes down so that we don't have to pay the 7%, and reduce those costs so that we can allow the pool to run longer. So all of those things to make it more affordable for our community.
So if I could make a suggestion,
Please do.
So annually, the district puts $100,000 into the recreation reserve. If council is trying to reduce the impact on taxpayers of this heat recovery, which isn't really going to impact the taxpayers at all because it's coming from a reserve, to say a reservation, a reserve. But, we could reduce the transfer into the recreation reserve for this year. See what kind of cost savings we recognize from this heat exchanger next year. And then return to, funding the recreation reserve next year.
You understand?
No.
You're taking money from Peter to pay Paul.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
So it is my understanding that the suggestion is made, so every year taxpayers' money is added to the recreation capital reserve.
Correct.
Where we save money to replace capital items within the recreation department or within the recreation center. The suggestion is to reduce that number this year. Because we already are gonna spend $100,000 on a heat exchange. So we're gonna reduce the contribution to the capital reserve with a number that will allow us to keep the pool open for 10 months without impacting taxpayer funding. So we're taking, essentially, what we're doing is we're taking capital, a contribution to capital and moving it to a contribution to operations.
And if we save money, then we can put it back into our.
We're gonna start saving money in 24. Right, that's when the heat exchanger is gonna really start to begin. And then we can still have the contributions in 2024. We'll have the contributions to the capital reserve back up to par.
And sorry, just to be clear, the recreation reserve is one of the only reserves set by bylaw that can also be used for operating costs.
May I say something?
Sure.
I just want to, I guess, voice my opinion. I think if you look at, I mean, I've been here a decade, and if you look at what the pool has contributed and sort of the turbulence that the pool has seen, I just feel that, you know, the pool operations and what it offers the community is finally sort of going into a positive direction. And I am very grateful for the efforts that SWIM's put in raising funds and contributing that to a municipal facility in enabling our district to have a pool open for 10 months. And if we're at this point sort of debating whether or not it's going to be, you know, 8, 9, or 10 months, which is, you know, the difference between, you know, $10,000 or $20,000, and we have a solution, I would be a very, you know, I would be very supportive of maintaining sort of the direction that we have taken, maintaining the programming and the staff for 2023. And then indeed, we can see in 2024 when we have the budget discussions and how the, you know, this heat recovery system is enabling, you know, a reduction in cost to revisit at that time, whether, you know, we can afford to go 8 months or 9 months and then reconfigure at that point. But like I said, I just feel it's, you know, now that we have good momentum with the pool and with staffing and with the public, I feel it's, you know, it will do more harm than good at this point. That's my opinion.
Through the chair, I'm just a little confused on what the final decision is for this budget.
So I have not heard a final decision.
Okay, I didn't either.
So I made a suggestion that we reduce the transfers to reserves. If council is on board with that, then council should decide how much to reduce that $100,000 transfer and then come to a consensus that everybody wants to do.
And how much of a reduction to the capital reserve would enable or would fund 2 additional months of pool?
We're already funding 10 months.
But to remove
1 month.
Remove one.
one month, 2 months. So what is 1 month of pool cost? The taxpayer. Because if we're gonna not ask the taxpayers to fund that 1 month, but we're gonna take it. We're not gonna take it out of the reserve, but we're gonna take it out of the contribution to the reserve in 23.
Pick a month so that nobody thinks I'm just picking the wrong month.
September.
So September cost the taxpayers about $5,200.
$5,200. All right, so I'm,
Oh, that, the basic, right? Oh, that was probably that.
It wasn't,
month.
it wasn't the best.
Okay, best,
But
yeah.
can I make a suggestion then? If we contribute $100,000 to the recreational capital fund every year, that I would make the recommendation or whatever, suggestion, proposal, whatever, to reduce that number to $80,000, $20,000. And instead of adding it to the capital reserve, we're gonna add it to the, we're gonna add it to the operating funds of the pool. And with that, we can reduce the contribution to taxpayers for $20,000.
Do you have those numbers figured out in your head?
No.
You lost me.
So Jody said that, Ms. LaRue said. Is that, in September cost $5,200 to run the pool.
Yeah.
Probably some other month is gonna be more, right? So I'm just picking a number, a safe number, 20,000. I'm saying instead of adding 20,000 to the capital reserve for the rec center, we're gonna take the 20,000 and we're gonna direct it to the pool. And that way, we can reduce the taxpayer contribution to the pool, 20,000. Okay.
And keep it open 10 months.
Keep it open 10 months.
$5,000 or $0.20 a meeting.
Sorry, Councilor Flynn.
Through the chair. Ms. LaRue, I'm just looking at the statement of operations that you gave me for 2022 for the whole year. Okay, so looking at the year to date for 2022, total expenses, that's covering everything for the pool, was 276,000, just about 277,000, correct, on this year?
On what you.
What I have here.
Since then. yeah.
Okay, so did it go up or down? Okay, it went up. So you're saying for September, we're looking at $5,000 or something. Would it not be best taking that 275,000, dividing it by the 12 years, 12 months, which is coming up to around about 23,000, if you're averaging it out?
Yes, except as Brad and I always have this argument, that includes all of the hydro and propane costs for the building.
Okay, so then why is it like on this sheet here, we've got other allocated expenses to the pool. We've got a breakdown of hydro, propane and pellets.
Because
So that's confusing me.
it used to be allocated on a percentage. And I believe it was October or November last year, it was determined that that was unfair.
Okay, so then if we're taking that off this spreadsheet there, so we get rid of all of the heating, propane, hydro and pellets, our year to date for 2022 is 150,000.
57.
Okay, so 157 now. So then we're looking at 13,000. So that would be a better thing than saying September is going to cost us 5,000. We should be looking at 13 instead. Correct?
I mean, I went 20.
Yeah. Well, I started higher than that until we took out all the heating, which to me, a partial heating should be applied to the pool anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've taken off all the heating for the rec center, which brings us down to 13. So I'm thinking 17, 18, I don't know. Instead of the 5,000.
There's, I believe there's already a motion on the table, so the vote should happen, but if it helps, remember that 1% change in property taxes is
22,000.
roughly equal to $22,000. So it's about 1% that's on the table. Everything.
Which through the chair, 1% is a lot to the taxpayers.
So there is a proposal on the table are we all supportive of the proposal, or do we want to vote, where? Any further questions? Before I call a vote. Oh, we'll call it, okay. Oh, Mr. Taylor,
Sorry.
you're still here.
Hello. Just before you vote, do you mind if I just clear some wording for the minutes?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just have some down transfer to rec reserve 20.
Very good.
Works for me.
Even just how this is the
Chair, if I may suggest wording for the motion on the table,
Yes.
that the rec reserve fund transfer be reduced from $100,000 to $80,000 for 2023, and that the remainder $20,000 be directed to the pool operations for a 10-month.
Very good. Okay. I'll call the whatever question,
You've already had a mover and a seconder,
okay, there we go.
just a vote.
All those in favor? Okay.
Let the dogs out.
All right.
That's 1%. That's 1%.
All right. Moving on from the pool and things. The next thing on here is economic development, and there's an economic development budget, which is mostly funded through an NDIT grant. We've been receiving that for a few years. I guess my question is on economic development, what is it that we're hoping to achieve, and how is that, what is it the public going to notice after we spend those funds?
Better. So I have some handouts here. So we just both handouts. So this is the economic development liaison, the person that's funded by the grant. Suzanne Denbeck, she typically does a presentation to council. Whether it's often the council would like. So this is the one from February 8th, 2022. A couple of you have actually seen this presentation. But if she was planning on doing one at some point this year for you, if the grant was approved. So you can just look through it, read it if you like. On the very last page of it is the proposal, so if you look at the very end. Thanks. This was the proposal that was submitted by Suzanne and the grant writer, to NDIT for her plan, very high level plan of what she's looking to do this year. With a number of activities focusing on just engagement, working with existing groups, Range Beyond Range, CCCTA, Tourism Lillooet, Chamber of Commerce, and so forth. A large chunk of it is going to be working with the Statland communities on the cultural center here, because that could be a huge economic driver. And as well as just planning and activities around future growth. So very long-term things. PNB is one of the programs. It's a mechanism for prospective Canadian citizens who have money to invest in the community. We've got one initiative right now. We're going through the process of looking at properties and talking to the chamber, doing evaluation to see if we can bring new foreign money into our town. As well as just very, very focused engagements, whether it's brochures or online engagement, improvements to our website or so forth. So like any economic development officer, she's kind of doing 100 things at once, juggling all the little things that she can find partners with in the community and in the region to try and attract business here, to make sure that business owners that are interested in Lillooet have all the information you need to make a decision. That's something we definitely saw was lacking on our website and our resources. So people would ask, do you have high-speed internet? There's nothing about that on the website. They didn't even know that. So little things like that, but also just strategies. It's to how do we get people who are coming from the lower mainland to Whistler to maybe just keep driving, see the actual end of Sea Sky. So because the person we've been contracting, Suzanne Denbeck, is actually based in Whistler, but works throughout the entire region, she has a very regional perspective on things, which brings value to the initiatives that we're tackling here. So she's seeing what works in other communities. She's a hard to get person now, actually. She's slowly thinking about retirement. With my last phone call with her, she's like, well, I'll keep working with you. Really fun to work with her here. So that's kind of her goal, is to just continue on this project she's been working on. See, economic recovery plan on the front page. It's a long multi-year plan. Trying to recover us both just from the shift that Lowell's had because of the industry change here from resource to more diverse. To a little nitty gritty things that are making actual activities. All of it just supporting businesses, the chamber, and so forth.
So this is a list of activities or work elements. But what are the outcomes that over the, the long-term plan, what are the outcomes that become visible for everyone?
Yeah, it would be hard to quantify those immediately. If we're looking at like economic financial changes, those are gonna take time. We'll see that in the statistics as to the number of businesses, the income levels, the value of properties here. Businesses are successful, they fix up their properties. In the short term, people will see activities, partnerships from regional organizations like CTA and so forth, working with the Chamber of Commerce and the Tourism Committee. So I'm not sure if it's committee yet, but local groups, so that there's activities occurring. So there's like pop-up information booths that were explored during COVID time. It'd be nice to see what's actually happening. Support for the actual Tourist Information Center brochures. One of the ones that's out now that she worked on with us was the Don't Love It to Death program, which I got to see the poster last time I was in the BC Fair. He was walking up the stairs and this giant poster of somebody hiking on Red Rock saying, "Don't love it to death." I'm like, I live there. So, but that was our contribution through her working with me and Chamber of Commerce and Tourism Willowet staff to say, okay, this branding and this marketing makes sense for us and it will get people out here. In this case, it was about people coming out and being respectful. So a lot of the things we might not actually see here in Lillooet directly because they're advertised to outsiders, right?
But this long-term outcome that you're referring to is appreciation of values, and whether that be commercial or residential or such.
That would be one of them. Yes, if we see all the typical economic indicators going up over time, it means hopefully these activities are contributing to that. It's not just natural growth.
Yeah, so if we turn out, if we turn it into another Kelowna, then Suzanne has done a great job.
If that's what the community wants.
Maybe too good.
Does that answer the question?
Any other questions with regard to our economic development program? There's a question, my question at some point was that the budget assumed a fully staffed, full staffing levels, and my question was, how realistic is it that we're going to have full staffing levels? But I understand that earlier you presented something that sort of addresses that point. And so then coming back to that first page that was basically the response was that you're proposing to take out $90,000 out of our budget to reflect the fact that we have vacant position or vacancy in our staffing and that we have not been able to fulfill, which means that we haven't been able to deliver the service levels that we put for it. And therefore, we're going to reduce the budget with 89,000. Yes. More?
I just don't know how to read a piece of paper.
Okay. Okay, with that, I don't have any further questions unless there's someone else that has a. Yep. Okay. Yep, sorry.
I'm just reading this here now. I'm just reading this here now, and that they have it out here. It says, $13 for the average single family resident and 37 for the business. Now, is that our local? Is that what we get out of it, or is that the total taxes that the government runs and the SLRD and?
That's just municipal.
Well, that's just municipal, so in the end, if we cut our taxes by 1%, what is the whole thing come to then?
I can't tell you. We have absolutely no idea what the other agencies are going to set their rates at or requisitions at until we get some. It doesn't impact, I mean, of course, it impacts taxpayers, but it doesn't impact the budget because it's in and out.
Okay, I was just wondering, like, the taxpayers, like, that's who voted us in, so, I mean, $13 and $37, that's just for us personally. That's not coming out of the taxpayers' pocket, it's more that they're saving by 1%. If we take our tax rates.
No, because the other tax rates won't be affected by what we do. If the SLRD wants $100 and we were gonna collect $100, but now we're gonna collect 90, the SLRD still wants $100.
So, okay.
No, because I mean, we can work, and be very, very lean and diligent and that sort of stuff and, be fiscal responsible and get a really feasible tax increase of maybe 2%, and the school may say we're gonna increase by 25, and then we are going to get all those comments.
Watch me raise the tab.
About exactly how much we're. Mayor Huffle.
Through the chair, so looking at this form, 6.9% would have an impact of $97. So basically $100 on the single family residential property. Based on the fact that somebody had water, sewer, garbage, that also is going up 6.9%. That is aside from this. Is that not correct?
Correct.
And that would be about another $90 if they had water, sewer, garbage. So I'm just saying that if we were to do 6.9, and if somebody, I live on the hot farm, so I don't have sewer, I just have water and garbage, so mine's different, but just based on the average that had all three, our taxes would go up per household about $180 a year, not including what the school or SLRD or policing or whatever.
But we're not saying it.
I know, I'm just saying that while we're talking about tax increases, that is what we're talking.
So if I could actually respond to that, just
Yeah.
because it was brought up. So in utility charges, if they had water, sewer and garbage, it would be an additional approximately $95 a year,
Okay,
plus the additional $98.
okay. All right, thank you.
I'm gonna go to bylaw enforcement from Councilor Plant.
Okay, through the chair, I was just reading through all of this here. Bylaw officer, we are looking at going to 5 days a week. We've only been at 1 day a week because we haven't been able to get anybody. Do we really need 5 days a week for bylaw? Can we go with just 3 days a week?
Cost is 3 days a week. That's what your contractor costs. We have managed to get one employee for the position the last 2 weeks. the level of qualification and experience with the council. They want to, so it comes back to that question of, are we competitive? Are we attracting people to this position? And the reality is showing we are not. We are in a rather desperate situation right now. We're very grateful for the contractors being able to help us. The cost is just going up for that. So we're really kind of stuck if this individual leaves, then we have zero bylaw enforcement. Every complaint that comes in, our answer will have to be, I'm sorry, we can't do anything about what you're doing. I feel sorry for it. So even when it was 3 days a week and we had a person work 3 days a week, getting into the details of personnel, at this high level, even at that 3 days a week, the workload was increasing, even though the hours were increasing. I think there was. We bumped up the hours a little bit. We bumped up the hours a little, trying to help with that. But still, the workload and complexity and the kinds of bylaw complaints that we're getting are getting tougher and tougher. Because becoming more, more legal. There's more legal fighting going on, being drawn into the court system more often. More lawyers being involved in these complaints. They're trying to counterclaims against because they're more basic enforcement. So the amount of time it takes per case is getting more expensive to do. So whether it's this year or next year, if the district wants to continue enforcing bylaws, we're gonna need a full-time person. And if they're waiting full-time now, it's gonna improve our chances of actually hiring anybody waiting in that position, is qualified, is actually getting it done, and helping make sure our community is safe.
Through the chair, so are smaller communities or communities our size doing 5 days, or I'm not 100% if I had heard from somebody that some of the communities are sharing a bylaw officer. So why are we a little different that we need 5 days while other communities are sharing a bylaw officer for the full week? What makes us so different?
Part of the reason we can't share somebody is because the person who was shared between the nearest neighboring communities, their time was used up with them. We got the short end of the stick. I did actually speak to the nearby communities about the potential of us rolling into that shared program. But their answer was no, we actually want to increase the hours to that shared service from 4 to 5 days. We were lucky enough to go that sometimes too. So that neighboring bunch of communities that we could have worked with, that opportunity is gone. The communities that are doing that, they want that, they're not good with what they've gone to. Also, some of the communities within that group have different levels of service that they want to provide with the person. One of them is going down the path of basically not wanting level of person to free of the some communities will work with the regional district on it. Approach the regional district, the answer was no. Person who's currently doing it is working part-time. They have interest in doing it. So our options are limited largely because of geography. We are in a small town, which is also a hub for a larger community around us. But we don't have the ability to partner with anyone else. We're going to keep looking so far at the doors and finish up.
Through the chair, can we ask Mr. Oiki, what is the most, like, the percentage, like, what are the most things that we are seeing with infractions or whatever we're doing there?
Thank you. Did present that at the last meeting.
That was a lot of meetings ago and a lot of information.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I did want to bring that forward. In my presentation, we talked about that. And I had said we're 80% closure of files. That was only 1 year. So that means the 20% are accumulating year after year. So we're going back 4 years of enforcement and accumulating those.
So we may close 80% of our files, but we still have 20% that we're carrying over and over. So of that, I think, I believe. Here.
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, I think it's general, well, I have it under general, but I believe those are nuisance and complaints, so unsightlies and the zoning infractions as well, those are in that higher the top range. If I can address this, the bylaw enforcement, as it sits now, we're reactionary and we're losing the battle. We are losing and going. Losing meaning the cases that we are looking at, we have no way of being proactive in addressing things. Case in point, we have another piece of property that's growing and I watch it growing on a weekly basis. We're going down the road to one of our worst zoning cases again, which has been 4 years in the making. It's happening on another piece of property. Having a bylaw officer only here 1 day a week, we're not able to get on that and do this because it takes time. It takes time to talk to people, to call, they don't call us back. We can't go on property without their authorization, take pictures, all that kind of stuff. So it becomes a real big reactionary thing. Being proactive of doing things like one of the things I see all the time, and this goes to helping our businesses. There's businesses coming in and out of this community, left, right, and center without business licenses. We don't have that active bylaw officer to be doing checks and so, hey, did you know, by the way, could you please get your business licenses? Is that fair to our businesses? If they're not paying business licenses, but come into our community. Dog licensing doesn't cost us much, but now we're investigating an dangerous animal situation. That's because we only have a bylaw officer 1 day a week. It's now taken 5 times as long. A 1 week situation should have been done in 1 week. Citizen was bit. It's taken us 5 weeks to deal with this issue. By that time, there's been people chased down by the same animal. So we're not able to get to those things.
Can't the cops do something about that?
They can, whether it's a lower priority on, yeah, they have. In that particular one, yes, they were involved in this.
Okay.
Yeah. So we are dealing with
We're
those.
paying for them, like.
Yeah, for sure. And then we're working with that, have them utilize our bylaw systems. But again, they're dealing with crime opposed to lower level stuff. So whether they have, and they have staffing issues as well. They're going down to 3 officers in a short amount of time. Whether they can do that.
They may do the upfront,
Yeah.
face to face, here's your ticket, you've done something bad, but then that comes back to us. It's like any police, it's 1 hour or 10 hours on the desk.
You know, even in the middle of where we are unable to do patrolling of water, illegal watering and stuff, which has cost us dearly. And not last year, the year before, and the pumping systems have been overrun, causing a pump to go down and fail. You know, and that's all cost effective. If we were enforcing those things and being able to do patrols, we would be able to proactively stop some of those things from happening. So, yeah, our stuff isn't as, I guess, in your faces, but it does have effect in all of the departments, building to fire department, you know, chasing down people burning and out illegally to all those types of things. It has an effect. And right now we're just reactionary. He's coming in 1 day a week and just trying to catch up on just what he's got and not being able to stop the other things that are happening. So sidewalks, you know, he was picking up files for shoveling of snow complaints and following up that, well, the snow's all gone now, so it's gone by, right? So it's, yeah, it's all relative, right? And yeah, it is the complexities of things have just become astronomical. I believe everybody's doing COVID. I think we're no different, and people are really becoming aggressive towards us as well. Hence the black jackets and all that kind of stuff, you know. It's just dangerous, and people don't want to be in that role unless you're compensated properly, hence not being able to get affordable people to do the jobs, right? So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your
That's
question.
what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, like, we're overwhelmed. We're totally overwhelmed. As a manager, you may say, well, why am I doing anything? It is a union job. I can't do that as management. And my contract says as such, right? So I do as much as I can within the bounds of the agreements in there. You know, so I've talked to all kinds of, bylaw enforcement, all the way to Fort St. John, all the way down to the island, and they're running the same issues. And yeah, we're not in a competitive market for our wage. So again, it comes down to the end, right? So, but we're not low, we're not that highest, or
Combine that with only a 3-day-a-week job.
yeah.
That's what we.
Through the chair, do we recoup anything by finding or ticketing, or does it just take?
Yeah.
An eternity?
Well, a 2-year-old case, he's finally come in and paid his tickets, right? So it's taking that long to do.
Right.
The tickets were going. Yeah, through your chair, the ticketing, it varies, right? $250 to $50 ticket, so on, right? Chasing down those people to serve as well, again. It's not, we're not recouping costs as far as.
No, but if there was someone 5 days a week, contrary to 1 day a week, would there be more coming in on the ticketing side of it? I'm just trying to weigh
Yeah.
against payout.
Yeah, through your chair, potentially, but that's not what we want to do, right? We want to be education. And we said that, I said that right off the bat when we introduced the ticketing bylaw, is it's not a tool, it's a tool we use. It's not a penalty we use, it's to educate people first and then get that forward. But he said, at what point, like, the building inspector is tired, my fire inspector is tired, I'm tired of people being told over and over and over again. It's just gonna come to the fact that people need to learn, we need to fix them, because their consequences affect the other people in the community. They affect other business, they affect their neighbors, but they don't realize that things, although we educate them. So, you know, there's a point, and that's up to you, the council, to decide.
Oh,
The
I would
aggressiveness
love
of our bylaw enforcement policy.
I would love to get into this conversation, because I think there's too many people that have too many rights and not enough responsibilities, and that's just a fact of life, you know, that's exactly
It's
how
like
it
to
is.
get more business.
Did you have a question?
I do.
Sorry.
Through the chair. So how do we advertise for these jobs? So for this particular job, is it just online through Civic BC, or can we advertise in the local paper? Can we advertise in other ways so that people are aware that we're actually needing this? Because, I mean, who goes on to Civic BC to see if there's a job, like? And my second part of that question is, do you feel it would be better to have somebody for 3 days a week getting paid a little bit more, or 5 days a week at a regular job? Because I think there would be people that retire out there that might just want 3 days a week. You know, would that suffice?
To reach your, in this line of work, the retirees don't want to do it. You think, retired police officer want it, they don't want to do that. It's been very well known, like I've approached the office. Retired sergeants, and just a couple of them in town here, but wait, you know, why would I want to put myself up to that kind of stuff? I think workload's still there for 5 days a week. It's not a matter of paying them more for 3 days a week. It just isn't getting done. It wouldn't get done in the 3 days a week. It's there, right? So, and it's all up to you. You know, it's how much to understand that we become more reactionary than we do proactive. And that's what it is, yeah. But 5 days a week is there, supporting by development services, all of the departments, right? So,
What scares me is that, you know, we advertise for 5 days a week, we pay for 5 days a week. And in 2 years, you know, people have smartened up and, you know, realized, and then it's a union position, we can't get rid of it. You know, we can't.
yeah, to address that through the chair, I absolutely realize that was identified on when I came in and was asked to take that over and supervise that. There's things that we needed to look at and enforce, as Barry Deniger said, and utilizing those policies about
Comes with age.
Yeah.
Your probationary periods.
Right.
Yes, and using those tools like, I've been asking, we need to review our policies on reviewing those and the performance evaluations on employees. There was nothing in there that we could do at that point when I got here, and you have to go to process with the union and do those things, right? So it's key to have a good, solid human resource policy where you're checking in year after year. And if there's disciplinary action needed, then it's done, but documentation, difficult and long.
It
Long
is,
process.
and it scares me, like.
Yeah, well, that's,
Something, all of that, like,
yeah.
and getting
finding
the
a
wrong
proper
person. it's not about the person, it's about the service, but it doesn't matter about the service if you got the wrong person, right? So
Yeah,
Having a director of protective services in-house. If he has a bylaw officer, we'll have to spend time on management. Would be more on top of the performance aspect of it from the service level. If yes, everyone smartens up and starts caring about their neighbors and doesn't have yards that are jet traps. Management does have the ability to adjust job descriptions, conditions of employment, because if only 4 days is needed and there's some need in other department, we can talk to the union about doing split compliant rules in the first 2 days of time, but now they're feeling another gap. And we have some positions right now where it's, for example, planning tech / interdepartmental clerk. So they're actually funded from different departments because they're filling different roles. There wasn't a need for it. Planning technician 12 months of the year. But combined, that's a full-time position, which is now attractive to person. So we can make those adjustments in the future to make sure that it's actually providing good value.
That's where we,
Through the chair, Mrs. LaRue, in the budget, how many days of the budget is for Bible?
Through the chair, in the budget right now is 5 days.
there,
I was gonna ask a question that I can find out. We're just gonna wage rate out the bylaw officer.
So what I can say is if you look under a page,
93. 93.
page 93, which is bylaw and animal control. And the 1, 2, 3, 4th column from the right is service level. And you'll see 31,826. That is the impact of going from 3 days a week to 5 days a week. That doesn't just include what they make per hour. That also includes what the district pays for EI, CBP, benefits, pensions. So there's a lot more on top of that than just what a person would make.
Okay, so in actual fact. This $51,000, if we went from, so we go to 5 days a week, you were saying,
Correct,
that would cost us an extra $31,000 or 32.
correct.
So in a year, what would they make per year then? Like, what would their, how do you budget that? Like, how do you budget like our whole bylaw officer, like, what does he take from us a year? Just his wages, like without the WCB and whatnot, because that's all very.
Can I do that? Give me a minute, because this thing's really slow.
but it is, so, we're adding 31,000.
For what though? We're adding it to the budget.
To the existing level,
Yeah.
for the existing budget,
Which
which
is
is
the existing level, like, what is that person costing us? Like, we're getting 1 day a week, we wanna go for 3 or 5, like, what is
So
this wage for the
a
year?
roundabout way to do it. It's about 32,000 for the year. So that's adding 2 days a week. So each day a week costs about 16,000. So if it was 1 day a week, this person would cost us about 16,000. 2 days a week, 32,000. 3 days a week, 48,000. I think I screwed up on math. Sorry.
It's 90,000. Or is it?
It was a $90,000 a year job.
$80,000.
80.
Plus benefit.
Plus benefit.
Well, that includes benefits.
That's.
It's an all the
Fully loaded.
WCB all included.
That's fully loaded.
That's what it would cost us.
Correct.
He'd probably come on, whoever it is, would probably come on that with about $70,000. Job. So. Yeah.
Take off.
Just roughly.
Mayor Huffle.
But on page, on this page, whatever it is, 93, salaries and wages for bylaw and animal control actually come up to nearly $150,000.
Correct, because we have half of the director's wages in there as well.
So would, if we had a full-time bylaw officer and our director trained our bylaw officer, would we still be paying the director, sorry, would we still be paying the director that share if we have a full-time bylaw officer?
Well, they still need a director.
They still get paid for some account when it was working in Summerlands. The bylaw was actually paid on public works, like. Municipalities fund these bylaw officers, and bylaw services out of different departments, so. It could theoretically be taken down in here, but it would then have to be funded from somewhere else.
Right. It. I understood correctly, it is not the case that the fire chief is currently doing bylaw enforcement, and therefore his wages included here. The reason why his wages included is because he has managerial control.
I was just wondering if your workload was gonna get.
Redistributed.
He could wish. You might go down to 4 days a week and give yourself a break, you know, I don't know.
Any other questions with regard to bylaw enforcement or any proposals? Councilman McNair.
What kind of a guy do you need for bylaw enforcement? Like, do you need somebody with a criminal, background or?
Yeah, we're asking, there is courses, so we're asking for bylaw officer 2 as well for capacity work, so preferred. So these are preferred, and this is how we've kind of taken this, our last person, or when you said, okay, let's try to take a lesser qualified person. Try to train them and spend that extra time, so that's more managerial time to get them, and that's what the result is. So, but we're at preferred qualifications is bylaw officer 1 and 2 education, which is done at the Justice Institute. So there is educational requirements for it. Yeah, they're not like a police officer. They don't take a 1-year course and all that. It's a smaller course and all of it. So we have some requirements, and realistically, we want that because of work safety. It's not right. You don't want unqualified people there again. Right, it's such a big check. I should have the black vest on. Yeah, that's not him too. Yeah.
Okay, any further questions?
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. We're getting to the end. We're getting to the end. We have capital expenditures, sales of services, and then something about the bottom line and that sort of stuff. But capital expenditures, there is a budget for capital expenditures included in the budget. My question was to staff how this level has been set in absence of a capital asset manual. Like, how did we come up with a number to put away for capital expenditures?
So we, each year that we make the budget, we do a 5-year plan. And we also do 5-year project planning. So we ask that all of the directors and managers let us know, not just this year, what's coming up in the future years as well. There was this list that you see here that I gave everybody was originally probably twice the size. Until Jeremy and I both went, let's make a list that we might actually get done this year. Because we always have all of these carry forward items that are in the budget, are funded. But whether it's manpower or maybe just too many projects on the go, they don't always get done. So it was whittled down to this, which the managers and directors are confident, fully staffed, they would be able to achieve this year. Some of them, of course, take longer than a year to do, even if you're, doing them every day, but
Fully staffed.
yes.
And is this like a wish list? Or, because I mean, I understand that you whittled it down based on human resource and strength. Has there been any sort of either expansive or limiting factors without financial constraint?
Priority,
Priority.
safety, number one priority. And then you get into age of infrastructure so yes, it's not purely financial. It's, what projects should be done now rather than later.
Some regulatory as well. There's a regulatory requirement coming down on us. We have to act. And some of the staffing shortfalls are taken into account in this plan, especially public works. That's where we're working with Don Darling, his team of experts behind him is approaching these projects with a potential reality that it could be a long time. He gets off the hot seat, and he's gonna have to manage it with him and his team. So he also get these projects done.
And this list is not just capital assets.
No, it's projects,
Right.
be they capital or operational, was in here. They were split. On page 62 and
Sorry,
61.
61. Those are the project, sorry, we're capital at the bottom. But that's carried forward.
Yes, 62 is new projects.
Oh,
And
sorry.
again, operating at the top, capital at the bottom.
An example of that, replacement, they say, pool sand filter and piping, existing asset needs to be replaced.
Where is it? Sorry, where did you get it?
Under capital on page 62. So halfway down,
Oh, okay, sorry.
pool sand, that's an example of something that kind of falls more in line with that asset management replacement strategy. You can identify pieces.
Okay.
The roads projects that we brought forward, those will fall under a future asset management strategy.
So for 2023, we have planned to spend $831,000 on capital replacements for new projects and $4 million for existing projects. So in total, about $4.8 million. I'm just adding to the 61 and 62.
$4,811. Sorry, $4,811,398.
Okay. Almost $5 million in capital asset replacements on a $95 million capital. Okay, it's up to So simple. Do you want to adjourn for 5 minutes?
Yeah.
You can take a recess. Yeah, we'll take a recess outside. I'll come back to you, Mayor. Council.